I'm Chance, and this is a new segment I'm working with that I'm calling the DM's Corner. And here I'm going to talk about running a game for yourself and for your friends. This will be a bit of an advice, kind of a general information kind of area, where I share my deepest thoughts about D&D and pen and paper RPGs in general. It's a very freeform kind of sit down and talk to you kind of video. And I feel like that's probably going to be the best way to get across a lot of the information that I have and a lot of the experience that I've had, and hopefully teach you all to be better DMs, be better players, and make better friends. Because I'm going to go over in this series everything that I have knowledge of. And you know what? Comment down below if you have ideas for things that you feel really should be covered. Since this is the beginning of this series, I feel like what's appropriate is to talk about getting started. And that is never, ever, ever easy, especially if you are a first-time gamer. And if you're a first-time gamer who's found yourself kind of being pushed into the DM slot, I am so sorry. I understand, however, that not every group of friends who wants to play D&D have somebody in the group who's experienced at doing it. If you have experience, great. I hope that these videos give you some insight and help you come up with shit that enriches and makes your game better. Mocha, what are you doing? Silly dog. Okay. There. Cuddles. Getting started, let's talk about probably the most important part, at least of getting started, picking a system. This could be a system that you happen to have available to you with the books. This could be a system that you are able to get advice from a friend who's run it, or you've played it before, or you have some kind of experience with it. That might be what's best. On the flip side of that, if you're just looking for a system, there's only really 2 or 3 out there right now. The only current systems I can think of are 5e, Pathfinder 2e, which I'm not a fan of. It just didn't make much sense to me and seemed really overpowered. And then Starfinder, which is a bit confusing. Obviously, there's contemporaries like the White Wolf system and GURPS and Palladium, and there's a dozen editions of D&D. There's the D20 system, which is D&D 3.5 and everything compatible with it. There's All Flesh Must Be Eaten, another good game system I like. And it's a D6 system that runs a gamut of compatible role-playing game settings, including Buffy the Vampire Slayer and an Angel Compendium. So, if that's what you're talking about, and I used to run that for Halloween a couple of years running, it's fun. There's the Tri-Stat system. There is DreamPod 9's Silhouette system, another D6. It's a very gritty sci-fi system. There is Shadowrun, which is kind of a cyberpunk D&D kind of system. There's that role-playing game for Firefly. I can't remember what it's called. Fuck, for the life of me. Maybe I'll look it up. And eventually I plan to do deep dives on all of these. Talking about them, talking about any experiences I've had with them or my thoughts on them. I plan to do a lot of videos. This is mostly a D&D channel. I also review snacks, and most of that started with me picking up, being brought strange little knick-knack foods during D&D time. And this has been happening to me regardless of the group since like high school. And then me having little thoughts on them, so I decided to post them to YouTube. And then I started posting D&D to my D&D campaigns to YouTube, which kind of fell out. But I digress, kind of getting back to the topic. That, in case you're wondering why there's food reviews on that don't see a lot of views, that's why. I make them, I think of them, I think they're interesting. I like eating weird shit. There we go. Well, new shit. Not necessarily always weird. But picking a system is going to really help you get an idea of what you're going to do for the setting. I'm currently planning a campaign that'll be set in D20 Modern. And I wanted to go with the 1930s aesthetic. So there'll be a lot of big mobsters and, maybe some Nazi occult leaders that are trying to find shit all over the world, and, vampires, and you get the aesthetic, mobsters and shit, and fucking really classic cars, and things that really interest me. The 1930s was a time period that H.P. Lovecraft wrote about. A controversial figure, I know. And a lot of why I'm using D20 Modern is because what I really wanted to run was Call of Cthulhu, and my players were like, that system, everybody dies all the time. They felt it was too stacked against them dying. They weren't against the campaign idea necessarily, so sometimes you have to improvise. Once you've got a system out of the way and find one that fits your campaign idea, you can really start planning. Beginning of a campaign is a lot of prep. I don't necessarily advocate for a lot of prep. We'll get into that on a separate video. But you need to have an idea of what your players can make. What are the possibilities that you're leaving open to them? And try not to close off too many doors. I find that a list of acceptable books for them to work with is more than adequate. And making sure that your players understand the do's and don'ts of character creation in your world. This means reading the books. Yes, sometimes reading the books can be kind of a drag because they're not novels. So there's not often a dedicated story that's going to continue one page after the next. And there's a lot of jargon. But as the dungeon master or game master, it's jargon that you need to have down pat. If this is your first time DMing, ever, and it's also your first time playing, I suggest that what you do is you take a couple of sessions of gaming before you even start a story to get your players and yourself up to speed on the system, on combat, on skill rolls, on test. Try it out. Maybe come up with your story, have them build their characters, but before you actually start gaming, sit down and have some combat. Have some no consequences gaming. Try out the combat system. See if it's really a fit for what you guys want to play. And remember, you're the game master. Rules that don't really work with your guys' playstyle as a group, they're really guidelines anyways. And you guys can make house and table rules to make things fit a little better. Now, I'm not saying throw the whole rule set out because it doesn't fit your understanding of things. Things are balanced for game balance by the writers for a reason. And that can often lead to people feeling stifled. Try it rules as written first. If you don't understand the rule as written, Google it. Somebody else will have broken it down in simple terms that anyone can understand. This is a big mistake that a lot of first-time game masters make, and it's one that's easily avoided because you might make a table rule that fucks over somebody's complete class and character, and it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to you to think you're not doing something wrong. I'm not one of these namby-pamby DMs that's going to tell you, but it hurts your feelings. No. It's a game, and games have rules. Games have existing rules for a reason, so that everybody feels like they can do something. Also, it helps to have a story in mind. And this can be anything from an overarching campaign-wide story to something as simple as the first mission or what brings the group together. You also have to remember the setting. Once you have a system, it's good to figure out the setting. What is the backdrop? What technology exists? Does magic exist? Do psionics exist? What races exist? What classes are available? These are all little questions that every one of your players is going to ask. And they're important to answer them. You can't just not have a set of rules for character creation. You can't just... There's a process to things, and it's really hard for me to distill down what it takes to get started. Getting started is never easy. And I say that as an experienced DM, it can be frustrating. It can be disheartening. It can be hard to be a DM. And a lot of players think that you're not under a lot of stress because you get to be the entire world, the arbitrator of the rules. You are, for all intents and purposes, God. Well, it can be kind of stressful to be God. First of all, you have to find players that want to play in your campaign. Second of all, you have to be able to arbitrate the rules in a way that everybody can agree with. You have to lay down. One up. Fucking dogs. Come on up. Attention hound. She is an attention hound. That is her breed. Fucking... You have to be able to come up with a setting. You have to write a story. You have to keep the players engaged. You have to be all the monsters. You have to make sure encounters are level appropriate. You sometimes have to stat out new monsters because something fits the story, but it doesn't fit the rules. And you've got to strike a balance. It might be interesting to tell a story where the PCs or player characters are exploring a dungeon and it's inside a pyramid, and there's a mummy, but a lesser lord, but you look in the monster manual and your players are only 5th level and this guy's CR9 challenge rating. So you can't necessarily do that, so you've got to go in and tone down the mummy to a fightable level. Or maybe they're way higher level than the mummy, and you're like, well, this boss fight will fucking suck, so you've got to beef him up somehow. Making him level appropriate. You also have to deal with the infighting between players. Not every group of friends is going to be compatible as friends at the game table. Because you can have 2 people who get along just fine all the rest of the time, but when they sit down, they become edgy rogue and stick in the mud paladin, and they no longer mix so well. And you don't want to stifle the creative juices of your friends. You don't want to limit the role-playing opportunities of the players. But now you're kind of stuck with playing mediator. This means that being a DM is not easy. It's not easy in the slightest. And people often forget it. They also have to remember that a lot of the time, you're flying by the seat of your pants. And we will get to that in another episode when I cover prepping and preparedness and the things that you have to do to really fucking get a grasp on things. It's not easy. But as much as I've doomsayed it so far, it's not hard. Anyone can DM. Well, alright, maybe not anybody. Some people just do not have the level of creativity to DM or the multitasking ability to be a DM. And if you can't multitask on that level, don't try. Just be a player. If you can't handle it, it's better that you just say you can't do it than to let everybody get all set up and then let the campaign fizzle because you took on too much. I guess a lot of being a DM is being honest with yourself. It's being honest with your players and sitting down together, and this is a cooperative togetherness game, to try to create a story. Once you've got your setting, once you've got your understanding, once you've picked a system, and I'm going to cover all of these subjects in particular depth at a later time. This is more to introduce you guys to the idea of DM's Corner. Now it's time for you to pick what level, or power level of campaign. Do you want them to be epic heroes for a one-shot, the likes of which the world has never seen, coming together to defeat a great foe? Or do you just want them to be average Joes, just thrown into a wacky situation and trying to figure how the fuck they got into it? Do you want it to be horrifying? A terrifying situation that feels like there's no way out and the tension is too great? Or do you want it to be kind of a light-hearted story where the stakes aren't so high and, I don't know, the chances of them dying are pretty low? I guess it's the difference between, the Blues Brothers and the Mountains of Madness. You've got to really figure the power level of the campaign, what kind of characters you're going to allow, and again, I will elaborate on these more in other videos. I've got a whole thing planned, so bear with me. It's all a matter of just getting the feel for it. Getting the feel for your players and getting the feel for the game. I ran a Star Wars campaign once, and it came out pretty good, but we set it aside for a while. When the campaign ended, they were about mid-level. I think they were 6th, 7th level. I decided to pick it up a couple of months later, and I told all my players, give yourself a level. Give yourself a level. And I came up with backstories working with the players as to what they'd been doing during the year in-game that they'd been down. Obviously, they defeated the big bad of the time. There was a lull in the campaign. So in my opinion, it was a brand new campaign. My players were expecting kind of a status quo that had been before. I went and changed gears on them and ran a completely different campaign set in the same world, with the same history, with the same characters, the same group. But everything was different. And that's the beauty of it. You can do that. Or you could just tell them to make all new characters. I had an idea. So I had a confirmed level, I had a confirmed system, I had a confirmed setting, I had a set of ideas. I had players that liked those ideas, and liked the setting, and liked the system, and liked the characters. And when you have that, getting started is as easy as asking, hey guys, want to play? Once you've got your system and your setting and your level worked out, the only real thing standing in your way is finding a day that everybody is off work and out of school, where they are free to come and gather. Most game sessions last anywhere in my experience, from 1 to 8 hours, depending on the group. My current group, we typically play for a 5-hour session every weekend. On most weekends. Not every weekend. And the campaign that I DM, where I am the game master, dungeon master, takes place every other weekend. And on those alternating weekends, my buddy Tons DMs. So, and so you can switch it up like that. There are a lot of ways to make things work with a group. So if you have an idea, talk to your friends. See if they're interested. If they're not interested, find other people. There are forums and Facebook groups and Discord servers. And the amount of places that you can post and find people to play for a campaign are endless. Advertise, advertise, advertise. And be careful. Sometimes you get some problem players. But if you have that, figure it out, get rid of the problem or whatever's causing the problem. And it's not necessarily a player. It could be something you're doing that's causing an issue. And always be prepared to be open to that option. And once you've got it figured out, you're going to have a great time. This is a great hobby. Usually, for the most part, there are some weirdos, there are some assholes, there are some creepy people who inhabit this hobby. I'm not going to lie. But for the most part, 90% of the people that you will meet playing D&D and other pen and paper TTRPGs are good, honest, fun-loving people who are going to enrich your game table and help you have a great time. It can be scary getting into a new hobby, but for the most part, this is one that you can play for as cheap as nothing. There are a lot of free resources to get into TTRPGs. Fan-made systems that are free on the internet. Things like 1D4chan. There are automatic dice rollers on the computer that, while sometimes they suck, sometimes they don't. There are plenty of free-to-use VTTs, or virtual tabletops. Roll20 is one. I don't really know of any others. There's D&D Beyond, but I believe you have to pay for that. You can make it as simple as using Google Docs and a dice roller in your Discord. You could keep track of the map with as much as a pencil and a piece of graph paper. It literally costs you nothing to sit down, meet new people, have a good time. I'm always talking about D&D collectibles and miniatures and maps and dice and all this really cool shit that you can buy for playing a tabletop role-playing game, but you don't need it. Need and want are different things. I think in a way all of us have a need to be creative. I think that all of us have a need to explore something beyond the mundane life that we experience every day. We have a need to escape. So, I think D&D answers that for a lot of us. I say D&D, you know by now, I mean all tabletop RPGs. And in a way, most of us are nerds. If you're watching me right now, it's probably because you watch some seriously nerdy shit and you stumbled on me. If not, maybe you know me on Facebook and I've posted this there. Or at least a link to it. Please watch and... Oh yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Because you should. I'm awesome, and I'd like more people to look at my shit. This is a hobby. As much as anything else. And I feel a sense of accomplishment when people like, comment, subscribe, and share. Those numbers make me feel good. And I could use an ego boost sometimes. But with all that said, and with the roadmap of what I plan to do laid out, I think it's time to end. So, have a good night, or day, or afternoon, or morning. And always, keep adventuring.